Unsee the future. Oh, sorry, you just caught me there. Hello, it is Unsee the Future, the Hopeychattybits. Welcome. It's with me, Timo Peach, the podcast in which I meet storytellers, artists, and solarpunks who are changing the stories we think we're in. How are you doing, and how is the story you find yourself in this week? This is quite a cheery space, but deliberately so, when we are surrounded so much with stories that are trying to freak us out, depress us, drain us of life. That's not the purpose of this little 45 minutes together. So welcome. Make yourself at home. And who is my guest today? Who is helping me reimagine the futures we think we're in? I'm ever so chuffed to have this guest on today. She invites you, she says, to meet them at the intersection of imagination, tech, community, and culture. An entrepreneur, a founder, a speaker, a champion of creative tech's place in human well-being, she works in the digital space, creating communities around empowerment, authenticity, and technology. She's someone, I think, who embodies engagement, flowing together the languages of gaming, storytelling, emerging technology, digital strategy, brand, and business. Across gaming, extended reality, and esports, she says she wants to connect the opportunities in such creative thinking with the people who most need it. As a founder of Sugargamer, she asked, what if there was a video game organization that had diversity inclusion as part of the company's culture? Mental health awareness was a must to prevent unhealthy environments, and talent was found and developed from non-traditional backgrounds. She regards video games as more than just entertainment, but a system of ideas and processes that can move and inspire people to action. She says, I'm the type who doesn't wait for opportunity to knock. I kick in the door and make myself at home. She is the geek of all trades, Keisha Howard.
Wow, that was like one of the best intros I've ever had. That's me? You were talking about me? Oh, wow.
That is you, my friend. And I was leaving bits out as well. I'm so chuffed to have you on. Thank you for joining me today, Keisha.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Now, it is sort of around about 9 o'clock in LA. It's midday noon in New York, and it's 1700 tea time in Bournemouth, give or take when we're recording this. But where in the world are you?
I am in Chicago, and it is 11:40 Central.
It is amazing. What's the weather like in Chicago today? Is it spring there yet? Does it feel like it?
You know what? I don't know what weather is anymore. Like in Chicago is probably one of the worst places to ask what the weather is like.
Yes.
Basically between the months of January and May. So it's just sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's snowing, sometimes it's thunderstorming, sometimes there's a blizzard, sometimes all that is in the same day. It's pretty incredible. And I think it's only going to become more incredible as time moves forward.
I like your use of the word incredible in heavy quotes there. Yeah, it gets big weather anyway there, as you say. But well, all the weather is getting big, and just like weather, time doesn't seem to mean much to any of us anymore. So, but before we get into all that and why you're on the show, I've got to ask, what are you playing at the moment? Is it an old favorite or something brand new?
Oh man, I'm always playing multiple things at the same time, but I'm playing Cyberpunk 2077, and I'm also, my old favorite that I love is Darkest Dungeon by Red Hook Studios, and it's a game about taking adventurers through these dark dungeons, and they get stressed out in addition to all the other things that they have to endure. And you have to keep them alive, and it's kind of a little morbid, but I like the idea of like protecting people and making sure that they don't get stressed out. It's super hard and they still die anyway, and it sucks. But I, for some reason, just love this game. I love it so much. So
Did you did you play? Have you ever played? Are you into D&D? Were you ever into the sort of board gaming equivalent of that culture?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we created our own board game called Project Violation. But I digress. Yes,
No.
I played D&D and Magic and just all sorts of different board games. I love board games actually. So, but yeah, as a kid, I played D&D, and when I got older, I wanted to see if I could encourage demographics that weren't marketed to back when
Right.
I was younger, to see if they could enjoy playing tabletop RPGs and theater of the mind and
Okay.
what it
Yes.
means to use your imagination as an adult. And it's just kind of all in your head as you with friends imagine yourself as a different character in a different world, making all sorts of decisions and that sort of thing. And I think that there's a lot of demographics that didn't
Mm.
know that that was cool and that was cathartic and that it was healthy and okay. So now, I'm all about trying to make sure that everyone knows that theater of the mind is really, can I say, can I curse on this show?
Yeah, we're British. You can say what you like.
Oh yeah, it's really fucking cool. So it's like it's time to like, especially now, we really need to tap actively into our ability to be imaginative as adults.
Yes, theatre of the mind. I mean, I love that. Caroline Peach, she may be a relation, has just said hello to you on the show there. So hello, Keisha from Caroline. Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, a theatre of the mind. I love that phrase, and just the idea of it being there are demographics. There are people who didn't know, who didn't get the memo that this is cool and cathartic. Is it RPG stuff that you most enjoy? Role playing things, really immersive, or is there? I mean, I imagine you as a gamer loving all the different kind of approaches to gaming, but is there something you most enjoy?
Yeah, problem solving. That
Right.
is at the foundation of everything that I enjoy, really. Problem solving and critical thinking. I like the idea that there's more than one way to do most things.
Oh, I like
And
that.
as long as you're open to that, it keeps you a little bit more free in society.
Yes.
It just keeps you free because we become so attached to an outcome, and there's only one way we can get to that outcome because those are the rules. And then you find out there's like 10 ways to get to the same outcome, and you're just like,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
didn't know this. And games of all kinds kind of keep that corridor of thought open for me.
You're bang on brand for this show immediately. There's no mucking about. Yeah, you got to think that whole thing might pay off later. I mean, I know that you founded Sugargamers to allow, lots of people from other backgrounds to feel at home doing this, that this was also for them, because why on earth wouldn't it be? But also you did find your sort of social confidence in gaming, didn't you? I understand that really it was playing one of the Final Fantasies that helped you as a really young person practice reading and performing out loud, bonding with your brother, that kind of thing. Really basic social stuff that gaming gave you from the off.
That's interesting. I have so much cognitive dissonance around what you just said. Like, you found your social confidence. I don't think I've ever found my social confidence. I
Really?
just know how to I just know how to be productive in society. So, and part of that is sort of exuding a confidence in knowing that you can do a thing that creates some kind of value.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if that's like, because every day I'm just like, do I know what I'm doing? I'm always questioning myself. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I am comfortable there. I am so
Yes.
comfortable there. I am comfortable and I think that the thing that makes me appear socially comfortable or socially competent is that I have a relationship with uncertainty that most people don't have. So
Interesting.
I'm just like, yeah, like I'm living. Might as well see what this thing does because I'm gonna die one day. Not to be morbid, but
No,
like
but
I'm here, so might as well just see what happens and see what
yeah.
I can do to shape those outcomes before I'm not here anymore. And that kind of makes things okay for me. I'm just like, oh, I didn't know that was gonna happen. And either sometimes it's bad, and a lot of times it's actually pretty fucking awesome. And if you're open to the awesomeness that comes from randomness and chaos and uncertainty, like beautiful things happen. You meet beautiful people, you trust in weird scenarios that have just stupendous outcomes. I mean, there are some negatives too, but I don't worry about those as much because they're going to happen anyway, whether I am certain or not.
Your relationship there with uncertainty, that's interesting. That's a very, I would observe, that's a characteristic of artists or artistic approach to things, is being fine with uncertainty. But you must get a huge opportunity to encourage people. A lot of people come up to you and feel encouraged that here you are, somebody outwardly very charismatic who openly says, I'm uncertain about myself, about my place in the world, but I will engage. You must really get a lot of feedback from others going, Keisha, just thank you for giving me permission to be uncertain and be myself.
I mean, I hope I do. I would love that because I'm pretty empathic and I'm a problem solver, right?
Mm,
So when I feel that people are suffering from their perceived problems, I also am suffering from their perceived problems. So
right.
I definitely want to help with the tools that allows people to get through them. So like if that tool is giving yourself permission to exist and be free and be yourself, like,
Yeah.
hey, I'll be that example. Like, yeah, see, I'm here, I can do it.
Do you think that there's something in, this is such an obvious question, but I'll get it out. I mean, it's almost answering itself in the context of you and me, but role playing and kinetic play, you must think that's got a big role to play in teaching us alternatives to our lives and alternative futures.
Absolutely. And I think that the institutions that we are born into and we grow up in, they teach us that there's a cutoff point. And when you become an adult, like all of this simulated play that actually has always taught us things since the beginning
Mm,
of time, and we see all intelligent mammals and life on Earth playing, simulating play all throughout their lives for the most part. But for some reason, our play has to be equal to something that generates some sort of tangible value.
mm,
And that's where I think it all kind of gets really kind of fuddled because, oh, we don't have time to play. We got to work. And,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah, I, for some reason, there's something in my brain. And if I'm not playing, I feel not human. I don't feel right.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
feel like something's off. Like I need to play. I need to, see what happens. Like I'm gonna simulate this through a game, through whatever kind of game, through conversations, through thought experiments, any sort of thing. Just and that play relieves so much anxiety about uncertainty for me because I've already went through the simulation. That's what play is. You see
That's
like
what play
little
is.
tigers fighting, they are simulating, they're not hurting each other when they're fighting with each other, but they can, take down one of those. I don't know what tigers actually eat. I was going to say buffalo, but I think those are two different kinds.
I think tigers will eat anything that's too slow, frankly.
Right? But yeah, you get my point. So yeah, I think that it's it's play is just such a fundamental part of how we exist and how we're healthy mentally. Like even people who are great at just being at process are still
Right.
playing around with some things, trying to experiment with what the best processes is or are. They're just, I don't know. I just think having play as an ingredient in how we live is just important.
It is, for me, the word I keep coming back to a lot is embodiment. That's another artistic principle, that when you move yourself into these things, you're changing your brain. That's where you can't just sit here like this. So I find it interesting that you're such a kinetic, physical, active seeming person, when gaming can sort of have you sit with a console, it's just eyes and thumbs. But you still must have developed a lot of practical confidence in the different things you've embodied, even as you sort of carry your uncertainty here.
I mean, I don't know. I guess for me, like every day is Halloween, and I just try on different costumes and see what
Love it.
happens, you know?
Yes.
And that's fun to me. And that's just an internal thing that I find fun. And I think it comes out altruistic because I don't need to necessarily keep the things that I get from these experiences. Like I don't need
Mm,
to keep it. And be like, this is me, this is my only identity now, and you can't take it away. Like I could just let it go. And I guess that's another thing that might be a little bit difficult for some people, is just to let parts of your identity go to make
yeah.
space for what can flourish, what new identity that you can play with. Like we again we're raised to think like, all right, from this age to this age we're this, and then from that to that we're that, and then from
Hmm.
like 20 on up we're supposed to be these adults, and we are shorn of things that are part of development, are part of living. So yeah, I love trying out new things and having new identities, and from those experiences I learn things, and hopefully when I share what I learn, it's helpful to people. I'm not always attached to that being the outcome, though. I think I
Right.
used to be a little bit, but I've grown to the point where, like, if I'm just like the best version of myself to me, maybe I'm giving the best version of myself to everyone else.
You are sounding like you're living in the moment very well, which as a business person, entrepreneur, is very healthy, because you could be living in the outcomes the whole time and just frantically working for that. How have you managed to get so I want to use the word zen, and you might laugh at that because obviously it's a work in progress. But how have you managed to make yourself live so comfortably with that uncertainty in the moment and be so healthy seeming with that?
Oh man, I fought very hard to be here. When I was young, I was super nice, and people were just like, "Oh, you're too nice. You're too
Really?
nice," and that was a big thing. And then also, like, obviously, I am born into capitalism, so there is a relationship I have with money, but it was never. I don't know. Similar to, I would say, other people, like I don't care as much about money as I do about like people around me, my
Mm,
relationships, how I feel. I don't necessarily need a lot, and because I don't need so much, and because I enjoy being nice, like I enjoy being nice. And I live in a world that's constantly like, hey, if you're nice, people are going to take advantage of you. And that's not untrue. Hey, if you don't think about money, you're just going to be, flacked up and out there. And it's just not that bad. It's just not that bad being nice and not caring about money that much.
it's not that bad
It's
being
not
nice and not caring about money that much. I totally agree.
that
Write that down, somebody. We just summed up
bad.
everything.
It's not
That's
that bad. And I have had plenty of success in that.
yeah,
Like I'm
yeah.
not really trying to, like, fame and fortune is an identity I can try on, but it's not an identity I need to feel good about myself. Right.
No.
So like sometimes I'm just like, hey, let me put on my Hollywood aesthetic and just go out there and see what happens. And that is, a authentic part of me, but it's just a tiny sliver. I have so many other things I can be and explore. So sometimes I like to peek into that sort of whole environment and that whole society and see what everyone's doing. But it's
Mm.
not 100% fulfilling for me, and I'm not going to pretend like it is. Like, I don't want to be on
Mm.
social media, every day trying to get likes and trying to get those sort of dopamine hits that I can feel the hangover. I can feel the
Yes.
artificialness of it. It's like
It's a rubbish game.
yeah, it's like drinking for me almost. It's like, yeah, drinking is hella fun. It is until you're sick.
Yeah.
Until you wake up
Yes.
with that hangover, until you're depressed.
And it
Drinking
does do that when you're on, social media, that kind of Web 2 experience. I can feel the front of my head there. It's not like a holistic whole body experience, is it? Well, I think
yeah.
there's an implication in your work and in the whole tone of Sugargamers and you really, and it's encouragement, but because of mental health, you really care about that as an issue running through something carefree like games. There's a real call for it, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the going back to play and theater of the mind and games in general, it gives your brain a break because things are low stakes. Like, if you win, great, that feels good. If you lose, okay, your life isn't over. Like, you may have died in
Yeah,
the game, but you're still
yeah,
alive in real life. You could walk away and you can use your brain to think about, like, what could I do better next time? How can I solve these problems? And that is a healthy function of your mental well-being, because if you're
yeah, yeah.
doing things that allow you to practice not staying in place or not staying rigid because you have to win, right?
Yeah.
Like, being a hardcore gamer, like, you're already in a situation where you have to anticipate losing quite a few times before you're good at anything,
Yes.
right? Like, you're gonna lose, and you might as well prepare for that to get better, to level up. And just that mentality, just foundationally, it's like, I'm gonna be trash at this for quite some time. And then one day you wake up and you're good because of the consistent effort that you might have put into it if you wanted to, because you're playing and you wanted to. So you
Yeah.
leveled up in places that you wanted to. And it's like this authentic experience. And I take that same approach to anything I want to learn or any problem I want to solve in real life. Like, okay, I didn't solve it right away, but
But that's
I'm gonna,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine.
I'm thinking of that meme from a few years ago. You must have seen it of this little kid, a little boy who's trying to do a free jump, standing jump up onto a tabletop. And it just goes round and round and round and round of him trying and trying and trying and trying. And when you think he's going to get there, it keeps going and he keeps tripping and not quite doing it. He falls back until eventually he does it. And the pace of it, it's got to be 25 different takes or just cut, cut, cut. I think it was actually before TikTok, probably, but it's that sort of speed to it. And by the end, when he makes it by not giving up, everybody on the world goes, yay! But that's what you're embodying there. It is that kind of, I know you talk a bit about tenacity. Just, hey, don't fear failing. Just go again.
Yeah, it's I think that there's in our public discourse, there's just like something that sounds so permanent about failure. Like, I
Yeah.
failed at that. Okay, well, now what you gonna do now? And
Yeah. So,
it, like, even if you win at something, it results in the same feeling, for me at least. Like, I
that's
won something,
interesting.
I'm like, I'm excited, I won, I got this. And then what next?
Yes. Yes.
Like,
But
okay, well, that
don't
happened.
don't you
Time
think that,
goes by, you level out.
and you level out? Don't you think that's the whole that's a real expression of the gamification of our world global economics, that it promises win this, win, be a winner. And then when you win, how many stories do you know of us and people going, well, that was nice. It was good for a minute. Now what?
Yeah, and you need that hit again. And
You need that
that
hit
that's
again.
that's my issue with how we live now, because I feel like there is a sort of robust story on both sides of what we perceive as good or bad or right or wrong, and there's so much to explore there. So we, are constantly looking at winning as like the way to be and what we should aspire to and what our goals are, not understanding the perks or the positives of losing, and where that growth comes from, and where the learning really happens, and where your ability to connect with other people are, where we all lose at something. And like, how much more connected do you feel with an individual when you could be like, oh, I wasn't good at that, and that person could be like, I wasn't good at that either, and you're connecting on that human level, like, oh man, we cannot be good and it's okay. Like,
Keisha, that's how I connect. That's how I connect with most people. Is I was rubbish at that. It's a relief you're not as well.
Exactly. Trying to go around being like, oh, I'm great and perfect at all these things. Like, no, I ain't. And even the people that I meet that their metric of success is money, and that is our public discourse metric of success. Like, this person got funded X millions amount of dollars. And one of the biggest things that made me mad as an adult is the realization one day, and I'm like, rich people aren't smart. I'm just like, I was so mad. I thought rich people were geniuses and they had all the answers and they were just perfect in every way, because why else would they have that much money? Because they had to be uber intelligent with years and years and years of academic education. I just imagine them as kids reading and playing the violin and the piano at the same time, giving speeches at 14. That's how they got their millions, right? Because they just like really put the time and investment into like making sure that they knew everything about however they made that money. And that's why they're so smart. And that's why we believe everything that they do, and we try to imitate everything that they do, because it's the best thing for us.
Yeah. It turns out quite a few of them aren't all that and don't quite know what to do with all their money.
I don't believe that, Timo. You're a pessimist.
Aren't I though? I know. Everybody says I'm such a cynic. It's terrible. But I mean, I'm thinking here, before I want to get to something super positive that you're also, something else so positive that you're known for. But getting there, I am thinking of the context you work in gaming. We know it's not pretty in some ways culturally. Something like Gamergate all those years ago, back in 2014, man, that was ugly. How did you feel going through that as a woman in tech and a woman in gaming, when ironically it was a narrative game, wasn't it? Sue Quinn's game, Depression. It was like a follow your own adventure, as I understand it. Depression Quest. And then you get all this kind of horribleness that seemed to come out from a particular demographic of gaming. You can't have been proud of the sector then. How did you cope with that chapter?
And this might be one of the first times I've publicly discussed this. As an American descendant of slaves, I don't like, some of these things don't impact me in the same way it might impact someone that looks different, that is part of the majority, right? So I just have to deal with it, and not that it just completely doesn't impact me. I just know that there's no savior coming. I don't. I'm not going to have access to heroes in the same way, And so, like, when I did get harassed online, I did get gamergated. I just didn't use Twitter for like a week, and that was fine. I mean, like, what were they gonna do? Like, I live on the south side of Chicago, and if the world has heard about Chicago, it's, filled with corruption and violence, but it's still probably the best city ever. Seriously, and I believe that with my whole heart. But yeah, there is corruption and violence and segregation in the impoverished areas. They ain't gonna swat me. Like, they're not gonna, like, what are they gonna do? It's not the same culture reaction.
Yeah.
For so many different reasons. So, and then also just there's a part of growing up the way that I did where, and this is like a cultural phenomenon, where you're set down by whoever's taking care of you, and they tell you how the world works for you specifically, and how it's going to be different for people that you see. So like you can't do what white people do because you're not a white people.
Yeah.
So,
The,
you know,
yeah.
having that foundation of just like, hey, the world's gonna suck a little bit more for you. I just kind of was not prepared for it, but like on top of everything else that I would have to endure from a racial gender perspective, Gamergate was just in line, you know. It was just
Yeah.
part of
It
the
wasn't.
list.
It
No,
wasn't news, was it?
what's that?
It wasn't news,
Yeah,
really.
it wasn't news, and that was like really interesting too because like I had that whole experience, and people were like crickets, right? And then other people had that experience, and they had I don't know, a different outcome. And I'm not going to say positive or negative, but it just they had a different experience with it.
Yeah.
So, but like for me, I feel like this goes this just taking it back to the original part of what I'm saying is problem solving, right? And there's several ways to solve any problem, and if I believed that the only way to solve some of the inclusivity issues in gaming was to get validation from like
Mm,
people who are gamer gators, then I
yeah.
wouldn't be here right now. So like that is not my core demographic, so
It's not your
whatever.
core audience, is it,
Yeah.
Keisha? No. And I think you might be on a hiding to nothing if you're trying to please them. But it's
Right.
I think I'm observing in all the different ways that I'm getting to know my own planet all over again, that when you have a direct experience of how a system fails, you're just much more expectant of what's wrong. And there are others of us who won't have had that exact experience for whom it is news. You go, wait, why is this? But I thought was interesting attached to Gamergate was this idea of don't bring social context into gaming, man. We just want to play games, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. You do have a bit of a just, other than just showing up as you. Also, there's your enjoyment of narrative and problem solving in games.
Yeah, I mean that, you know, and most of the games that I like playing have they poke at how our society works. Like take Bioshock for example. I don't know if you're a
Right.
big gamer, but Bioshock is amazing. And yes, sorry. Bioshock, pokes at like, hey, there's this parallel society being made underwater because people don't want to follow the rules and
Mm,
limitations of the society that they currently lived in. So they took all their technology and all of their sort of uh, genius thinking into this underground society that still failed, but at least they tried something else.
yeah, exactly.
And like, playing through that narrative was really interesting because like you're this thing and you don't even know what you are until like kind of the end of the game, the end of the whole experience. And you're experiencing like this marvel of underwater, ingenuity and engineering created like even the thought of it was really interesting. And you're walking through like sort of the ruins of this super successful feat, and that narrative and to like engage with it on that in that way was super. I don't know.
Well,
I don't-
immersive.
yeah, it's immersive and it got my imagination going. It's like
Right.
I never thought about that. There are people in the world that's just like, hey, I want to do things different. Can I try it? And then they
Mm.
can't. And so they have to figure out another way to try it. So, and is that bad? Sometimes it is, but
But but
sometimes it's not.
but that's part of role play. It's trying something on, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
But
think there's something interesting you're making me think of here in the principle of gaming. Our era is sort of sometimes described as beginning to flatten time because we can start to pull things out of lots of eras different to when I was younger, when everything had a definite linear sense of now we're in the 70s, now we're in the 80s, and now we're all sort of just in this soup that's been exaggerated by COVID and all that switching off of things. But gaming is non-linear, even when it's following a broad trajectory. When you're world exploring, I don't know. I think I'm not much of a gamer, but if I was trying to get into it, as I often think, right, I'm just going to get a console and live in gaming for a month, and it would probably be something like, I don't know, No Man's Sky. I just fly around between planets and look at things a lot. Look, I'm going to do something time flattening now, Keisha, because although I'm not a big gamer, this is the level to which I am a gamer.
Is
Look
that
at that.
dust on top of your Nintendo?
You can see
Oh
it's
my
low resolution, but that is dust on my N64.
Yes.
And look at the cart that's in there. That, my friend, is Pilot Wings.
Wow. Wow. You don't even have Star Fox.
No, exactly. What was I thinking?
You don't even have Star Fox.
Why?
I have to get you some Star Fox, at least.
At least, right. But I found Pilot Wings quite restful. So 100 years ago, actually 25 years ago, although I'm not a gamer, it's never quite happened, although I love the idea of it. 25 years ago, I was art editor of a games magazine here in the UK. It was called Play, and it was for PlayStation. And this, I'll tell you a story here, young Keisha. It was years ago, back in the day when there was no sequel to Tomb Raider. And then suddenly there was a sequel to Tomb Raider. And we had it all over every issue for about a year. Yeah, we had all sorts of things. God, it was Doom, the second version of Doom, and all kinds of things like that. And I always loved the idea of kind of puzzle games rather than first-person shoot-'em-ups for the sake of it. I wouldn't be a Halo player, but the idea of losing yourself in a world I've always rather liked. But to me, gaming, I don't know, it reminds me of the Metaverse. Actually, especially does this. It still looks like Second Life, but I have noticed in the kind of teasers to games now, they're really starting to look a bit metahuman, aren't they? Getting a bit creepily good, and when the gameplay is getting there as well, isn't it?
That's it. That's interesting that you say that. Like, it's looking good, but is the gameplay getting as good?
That's the point. Great, yeah. Is it?
Yeah, it's looking more and more realistic, but I do find that, so my favorite type of game is called immersive sims. So that's
Okay,
like
yeah.
Deus Ex,
Yeah.
which if you've never played it, is a game about, this is, futuristic cyberpunk kind of thing, and you're this dude, and you're augmented, and you got all these robotic parts, and instead of like there being a race, gender, orientation, social fight, we're fighting over, are you augmented or not?
Right.
And
Yes.
as you navigate this world, there's always like 5 to 10 ways you can solve any problem, and that's really cool, right? They don't make games like that as much because they're super expensive to make.
Yeah.
Well, even though they're amazing, but the games end, right? And that is not necessarily the most lucrative way
Yeah.
to spend your resources when you're making a game, because data suggests, because we use data to innovate, right?
That's what I hear.
Yeah, that's how you innovate. You use historical data and do what they did for success, and then you get more success, and it's guaranteed.
It's guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's how we innovate.
Yeah. And that's how we innovate.
So, data suggests that immersive sims are just not that lucrative, because you want people to keep buying into your game. You want new skins and new things to buy, and
well,
new
and
weapons, and
probably what we should do is just keep making Lego shoot 'em ups and be done with it.
Sounds innovative to me.
It does to me as well. I was thinking the same. Now, you're bringing me to a principle here that I know you've said in one of your TED Talks. You were talking about how much you just honestly love cyberpunk for a style, but that it led you to the implication you've got here, which is we're stuck in old stories. And in all the art industries, all the different storytelling industries, we are stuck in that Reagan, Thatcherite, neoliberal economics of cyberpunk, which looks really cool with a kind of pink light on one side and a blue light on the other. And then you discovered something else, didn't you? Not cyberpunk, but
Solarpunk.
Solarpunk. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the light and sight of holy Solarpunk. Yeah, you did, didn't you? And that was something for you. That was an illustration for you that we need these new stories of us.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I loved reading fiction. Oh, love fiction. And if I could find an author that wrote one good fiction book, I would read all that author's books. Like I
Okay.
probably read most of Stephen King, most of Dean Koontz, most like there's quite a few authors I've just read their whole digs. And
May I jump in? This is part of the evidence of how we know you're a nerd, and I salute you. That you get that you go deep. You'll read it all.
Oh yeah, and I read books made out of paper back before reading on screen.
I love me some
part of my
paper.
brain.
Yeah, I love me some paper.
Yeah, I thought the tangible ability to sit there and practice focusing with your mind and eyes for some hours. Remember that?
I do. I've been doing it this weekend. Actually, it was lovely.
I bet it was. I'm trying to, like, one of the things I'm most disappointed about, as a real quick aside, is that I forgot how to read. Not in real life, but how to really get myself in the mind space to just relax into reading. And when I was younger, there was no, like, I didn't have a lot of technology around me. It was just the console. So it wasn't like I wasn't playing games on the computer. It was my books, and that was pretty much it. And then if I did have the cell phone, it was like one of them Nokia brick phones, and I had free nights and weekends, so I wasn't getting calls throughout the day. Remember free nights and weekends?
Yes.
And so that's when you would expect calls. But long story short, I remember that, just like having that time and ability to focus. Anyways, so I take in all of the stories, and then I like watch. If there's a movie that comes out based on the book, then I got to watch the movie. And then if there's a game that comes out based on the book, then I got to play the game. Anyways, you do this a couple of rounds and you realize that you're hearing the same stories over and over again. And then for me, I start to feel a little guy. I'm just like, they didn't change this. They didn't add anything to this. They just sold me something because they knew I would like it, because data suggested I would like it. And now I'm not able to have a real conversation about what it means to add something new. And so then I'm just like, I want to do something good. And so then I grab what's familiar instead of grabbing something fresh. And I used to have a lot more discernment, or I feel like we used to have a lot more space to have that discernment. And now we're not even given enough options to have that discernment. So we find ourselves locked into kind of a allegory of the cave type thing.
It really is.
We're forgetting that there's other things to experience, and that's where Solarpunk came in, and my fascination with it, because I'm like, oh man, Cyberpunk is the future, right? I'm just like, oh, it doesn't have to be. Like, we can actually tell stories differently, and I don't think that Solarpunk is all that utopic. I just think that it is a fresh perspective to take on when you're writing a narrative, a fictional narrative. Like, we don't have to have the exact same things that we've been taught is the thing if we're writing fiction. Isn't that like, and I don't know why, it's such a simple thought, but it's something that I have to constantly remind myself of. Like, I don't have to do what I'm expected to do. I don't have to like I'm expected to like. And Solarpunk is always a great way to reframe whatever I want to imagine.
Solarpunk is a great way to reframe whatever I want to imagine, and you don't have to you've embodied not doing what you're expected to do, I would suggest. I know you said in your TED talk about this, it was seeing Stefano Buri's kind of architecture designs. This one here I'm showing on the video version is It's the Bosque Verticano in Madrid, which I've seen, and it's it's just that very idea of bringing nature into a vertical urban environment is immediately kind of, oh, that's nice. That's like, we can live nicer, can't we? It's nice to be nice with nature and actually live in better harmony.
Yeah. I gave a talk at an Apple store for God darn it, I can't remember the name of that talk right now. But it was in front of a lot of super smart people, and I never forget when I talked about Solarpunk. A lady, an architect, came up to me, and she was like, and this kind of stopped me from thinking that Solarpunk was all that utopic, right? Because I'm just like, solar energy and solar panels and vertical farming and vertical houses, and it'll be great. Why can't we just do that? And then that's what we'll do. And then she came up to me, and it was a little annoying because it's not like I asked for the feedback, but she was like, I know you think this is good and all, but when architects put foliage and greenery in these vertical spaces, they you have to consider that the people that live there are going to have to deal with bugs and animals so much more, that it attracts life. And I'm just like, that's an interesting thing to think about. Like, we want nice things, but we don't want to compromise. So it's like, oh, bugs? Like, we got to deal with bugs if we want to deal with, and it's just an interesting thought. Like, are we willing, like, what sacrifices are we willing to make to live in harmony with nature? And that's where, like, my solar punk narratives come in, and that's how I kind of had, I would say I'm a solar punk dark. It's not cyberpunk, but it's a solar punk dark is how I think of it. It's like, oh, would people, like, what would be the way we would actually get to a solar punk society? Like, what would have to happen first? And that would be where our conflicts would come in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, I think you saw the TED Talk. My little brother, he asked me, like, what's so punk about this? And I'm just like, oh, like, that's basically, we are currently living in the time frame in which we would collectively have to do something to create a solar punk future.
Yes, that is our era. The JMO says that he considers Solarpunk the political wing of permaculture, and when I spoke with Serena Ulibari, who you might know, she's the editor-in-chief of World Weaver Press, doing so many of the Solarpunk stories. She helped me understand the idea that Solarpunk is, by definition, really in a time of transition, which we are. And so there you are, from a narrative structure point of view, there's all your conflict. It's people working out how to keep transitioning, but pointing in a different direction.
Whew. And that is a huge problem to solve. But,
Yeah. It could be awkward if it was real, couldn't it?
Oh,
bloody hell.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. Right? I thought it was interesting.
Write the stories down and contribute to the narrative. I got like, tomorrow's not promised, but I got some more years left in me. I'm hoping, and I'm hoping to add to the collective of energy that could potentially help steer this earth of people into a different direction. So I don't think I'll be the one to solve the problem, but at least I could feel like I could add a quarter to the cost.
Well, what else can we do but show up in new narratives and illustrate what a new story could look like and explore it and play it together? Plus, if along the way, Keisha Howard, you are also doing things like this, where you are fighting robots, or then I think that's pretty fucking cool, if you don't mind me saying.
I would say so too. Like I would say, you know, by releasing expectations for what I should happen, right? I get
Yeah.
to do unexpected things like fight robots, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it definitely is extraordinary and fun and meaningful to me. So,
It
you know,
definitely
like,
is extraordinarily fun and meaningful to you. I totally agree with that. Look,
and
that go on.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, you know, and that brings me up to thank you for bringing that up, because that brings me to another thing that I have been experiencing, especially recently, as it pertains to being a solar punker. um People don't really get the expansiveness of what being a solar punker is, or, you know, you there's a spectrum of it, right? And there
Yeah.
are different ways that people, it's subjective, different ways that people, different ideas that people have about what it means to live in harmony with the earth, or have more egalitarian environments
Yeah.
and cultures and so on and so forth. And I have gotten some interesting feedback, and like, people are just like, "Well, why would you do this and work for corporations and money if you're
Yes.
in the solar punk?" And I'm just like, okay. So I am now expected to just sacrifice everything for my interest in contribution to something. And that's another sort of thing that I feel like we're entering into, is like uh this extremist, like, we are losing our nuance. We're
Yes.
losing our exploration of things. We're losing our ability to deconstruct and look further in the layers of things. It's just like surface, you that, and anything that
Mm.
you do that appears to contradict an idea that is subjective and expansive is inherently wrong, or what's the word for it when you contradict yourself and it's bad?
Hypocritical.
Hypocritical.
Mm.
There we go. And I'm just like, this is an interesting part of being in this space. And I'm just like, okay, well.
Yeah, do it anyway. You make me think of something I found similarly over the, and I don't want to make it too firm in my head, but I have felt frustration with the general sustainability kind of community is not the right word, but it's very easy to feel like you do with a religious conversion. When you first start to see the state of the world as it is, the collapse of biodiversity on Earth, and you start to make the connections, this is all an economic culture driving this, everything. So all the global goals, the SDGs of the UN, they're all just different symptoms of the same economic story we think we're in, right? That's the point of my whole thing here. You can start to get a bit goggle-eyed because you want to run down the street and say, why isn't everybody talking about this? As if you've just seen God. And somehow you've got to chill out and understand that we're all works in progress, right? Which is why I find words like grace and reverence have come to me very quickly through Solarpunk, but especially sustainability, because I've got to be part of all these worlds, and that's between the nodes, between the worlds, is where we have to live, and we're agent in this point, not where it's all perfect, right?
Right. It's like, you know, I had to give up a couple of ideas that were forming attachments in my mind. Like, for
Right.
example, the work that I'm doing is going to benefit me. No, the work that I'm doing hopefully benefits other people.
Mm,
You know, like, I am already living in the benefit of other people's work. You know what I'm saying? As
totally. We all
yeah,
are.
so, like, I am a product of generations of people fighting for rights, fighting for freedoms, you know, sacrificing to take care of their families, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to think of my contributions as hopefully helpful to others. So I might
Yeah.
not see that perfect society, and I have to live in the way that I can now for me. And that's something that I'm like, I can be interested in this. I can push the idea that we can expand our thinking on how we perceive the future, how we imagine ourselves in the future. But if it does not happen in my lifetime, I can at least put the hope and the dream and the idea out there that maybe
Yeah.
somebody can grasp onto it and know that thread of thought makes them not alone when they have the same thought. Like, oh man, I have this thought and I don't feel right, and I don't know why I don't feel right. And then there are historical evidence. There is historical evidence that you're not alone, and I think that that's just so important when you find something, some person in history, some writing, something that just makes you feel not alone. It gives you the strength that you might need to make the changes that might benefit that next person that feels alone, and then maybe we can come together and, you know, do things that are good or not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you're on it. You were definitely on a roll there.
Let's
And
go to ground and move to Mars.
or we could just do that. Yeah, no, I agree and amen. Look, I could talk to you for the rest of the day very happily indeed. I would say I've got one last question that I must ask you, simply because I ask everybody this. Be interested to know what your answer is. I always ask how, if you were to leave an ancestral artifact, leave something forward for others. It can be a symbolic object, it can be a notion, a piece of writing, a piece of music, an idea, something that points in that more hopeful direction. What might you leave forward for future generations?
Probably a game. Probably a game, and a game that sort of teaches or gives or perpetuates the idea that play is important, necessary, and something that we should incorporate throughout our entire lives. And, you know, I would just like to add to that whole, you know, sort of catalog of different things that do that. And that would be pretty amazing of an artifact, in my opinion.
I think you should get on that. Let's start writing that.
I'm trying.
Keisha Howard, the original Sugargamer, you're a legend. Thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon. Let's do this again sometime. Thank you for joining me on Unsee the Future.
This was fun. Thank you so much, Timo.
Unsee the Future. Brilliant, huh? That whole idea I was getting from Keisha there about actually something a bit indigenous, living in the patterns of where you are, the spaces between the nodes and the eruptions and the things that seem obvious, and how to find new stories in the living in and the imperfection, and embodying it and holding the imperfection and the uncertainty really well, confidently, actually, and in confident confidence. What a wonderful chat. I hope you found that as inspiring as I did. Yeah, you can definitely find out more about her at Sugargamers, but also at Keisha Howard. I'll put all the links down below. Go and find out more about her. She's so much wonderful energy in all that she's doing and sharing so openly with people. A hugely encouraging presence to be with, even more than I pictured from all her lovely output. You can find out more about her at the links below, and you can find out more about me and all the foundational episodes of Unsee the Future's idiosyncratic style of research, exploring the big themes of our era of crisis, along with all the previous Hopeychattybits at, say it with me, unseethefuture.com. There you can also find exclusive previews of the new book from my findings, UTF, How to Think Like an Artist and Change the World. 9 practices of art that can help you reimagine the story you think you're in, and how much this show is helping me research that as I go. You can also encourage me by becoming a Momo Amigo and joining the Unsee the Future mailers, and you can find out more about me as a music artist at momotempo.co. If you are feeling it's all too much, Momo Tempo will cheer you up. Go there and find my creative context as an artist. What story do you think you're in, and are you figuring out yet how to change it? Let's encourage the more hopeful human tomorrow. Also, of course, new single How Big is out now. Go and find it. Ciao for now, sausage. See you soon.
How big do you want to be?
We'll rule the galaxy.
How much you want to get? what you wanna get.